Stop throwing away the most powerful part of your groceries. I know that sounds like something you'd see on a late-night infomercial, but after 3 decades of practicing medicine and reviewing thousands of pages of clinical research, I can tell you with complete confidence that the foods most likely to stabilize your blood sugar are not the ones your doctor mentioned at your last appointment. And some of the most potent parts of those foods are the parts you've been discarding every single week without knowing it. Today, I'm going to give you 6 foods ranked from highly effective to genuinely jaw-dropping that the clinical literature shows can lower fasting blood sugar, improve insulin sensitivity, and protect the organs that high glucose silently destroys. And I promise you, number 1 is going to stop you cold. It is not exotic, it is not expensive, it is sitting in your kitchen right now. But the way you've been preparing it has been eliminating its most therapeutic compound entirely. Here is the number I need you to sit with for a moment. The National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases reports that over 38 million Americans currently have diabetes. Another 97 million have prediabetes. That is more than 1 in 3 adults walking around with blood sugar levels high enough to be damaging their kidneys, their nerves, the tiny blood vessels behind their eyes, and the overwhelming majority of them have no symptoms. None. They feel fine. They eat what they believe is a reasonable diet, and the damage accumulates anyway, quietly for years, until it isn't quiet anymore. But here is what I have seen in my own patients, in my own exam rooms, over 30 years. The body wants to heal. It responds to the right inputs at every age. I have watched people in their late 70s bring A1C numbers down from the diabetic range to completely normal through nutritional changes alone. Not supplements, not procedures, food, the right food used correctly. That is what today is about. Before we get into the list, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment right now and tell me your age and what your most recent fasting blood sugar, or A1C, reading was. I read every single comment on this channel, everyone. And the questions you leave in the comments are the direct reason this video exists. Now let's get into it, starting with number 6. Number 6, dark leafy greens, specifically spinach, kale, and Swiss chard. And before you think you already know this one, let me show you the mechanism that most people, including most physicians, have never explained to you. Because it is not about fiber, it is not about vitamins, it is about something called magnesium, and its relationship to insulin is one of the most underappreciated connections in all of metabolic medicine. A landmark analysis published in the journal Diabetes Care, pooling data from over 270,000 participants across 7 independent studies, found that every 100 milligram increase in daily magnesium intake was associated with a 15% reduction in the risk of developing type 2 diabetes, 15% from a single mineral. And dark leafy greens are among the most magnesium-dense foods that exist. Here is why this matters so much for people over 60. Magnesium is a required cofactor for more than 300 enzymatic reactions in the human body. One of the most critical is the activation of insulin receptors on the surface of your cells. Think of magnesium like the electrical current that powers a door mechanism. Without adequate magnesium, insulin can arrive at the cell door and knock, but the door simply will not open. The glucose stays in the bloodstream. The pancreas produces more insulin trying to compensate, and over time, that cycle of overproduction and under-response is exactly what we call insulin resistance. After the age of 65, the kidneys become less efficient at retaining magnesium. Research published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that older adults excrete significantly more magnesium in urine than younger adults eating identical diets. This means that even people who eat reasonably well are frequently running a magnesium deficit without knowing it, and that deficit is quietly making their blood sugar harder to control every single day. I think of Patricia, 72 years old, a retired librarian from Asheville, North Carolina. When she first came to see me, her fasting glucose was sitting at 147, and her energy was so low she described it as living through fog. She was not on diabetes medication yet, but she could see where things were heading, and she was frightened. I made one initial recommendation: 2 large handfuls of cooked spinach every day, prepared simply with olive oil and garlic. Within 10 weeks, her fasting glucose had dropped to 118, and she told me she had not felt that clear-headed in 3 years. The practical preparation matters here. Cooking spinach actually increases the bioavailability of magnesium by breaking down the oxalic acid that partially blocks mineral absorption in raw leaves. Lightly sauté in olive oil rather than boiling, which leaches magnesium into the water. The synergy pairing is pumpkin seeds. A single ounce of pumpkin seeds contains 150 milligrams of magnesium, more than almost any other food per gram. Sprinkle them over your cooked greens, and you have created one of the most magnesium-dense, blood sugar protective meals that nutrition science has identified. Number 5, sardines. Specifically, wild-caught sardines packed in olive oil, eaten with the bones. I can hear the hesitation from here, but stay with me, because the research on sardines and metabolic health is among the most compelling in the field, and the reason sardines outperform even salmon in certain contexts comes down to a combination of factors that I want to walk you through carefully. Sardines are extraordinarily rich in omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, which reduce the chronic low-grade inflammation that is one of the primary drivers of insulin resistance in aging bodies. But what makes sardines uniquely valuable is that they also contain extraordinarily high levels of vitamin D and calcium together, and this combination has a direct and documented effect on pancreatic beta cell function. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that people with the highest vitamin D levels were 43% less likely to develop type 2 diabetes than those with the lowest levels. The mechanism is direct. Vitamin D receptors are present on the surface of pancreatic beta cells, the cells responsible for producing insulin. When vitamin D binds to those receptors, it upregulates insulin secretion and improves the sensitivity of peripheral tissues to insulin signal. For people over 70, whose skin produces vitamin D from sunlight at roughly 75% less efficiency than it did at age 25, dietary sources of vitamin D are not optional, they are critical. And here is the detail about eating sardines with the bones. The bones of canned sardines are soft, fully edible, and contain calcium in a highly bioavailable form. Research from Tufts University has shown that adequate calcium intake is independently associated with improved insulin sensitivity, particularly in older women through mechanisms involving intracellular calcium signaling in muscle tissue. Eat 2 to 3 cans of sardines per week. Pair them with raw sliced tomatoes and a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. The lycopene in tomatoes is dramatically more bioavailable when consumed with fat, and lycopene independently suppresses the inflammatory cytokines that interfere with insulin signaling. This combination is, from a metabolic standpoint, close to perfect. Number 4, a food that has been accused of raising blood sugar for decades. And that accusation, I am here to tell you, is based on a profound misunderstanding of the science. The food is dark chocolate, specifically chocolate with a cacao content of 85% or higher. I know what you are thinking, and I understand the skepticism. But let me show you what the research actually says, because it will genuinely surprise you. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that participants who consumed small amounts of high cacao dark chocolate daily showed significant improvements in insulin sensitivity after just 15 days. A separate study from the University of Copenhagen found that dark chocolate reduced appetite and blunted blood sugar response to a subsequent meal more effectively than milk chocolate. Not because of the sugar content difference alone, but because of the flavanols. Cacao flavanols, epicatechin in particular, activate an enzyme called nitric oxide synthase in the walls of your blood vessels. Nitric oxide causes blood vessels to dilate, improving circulation to muscle tissue. And better circulation to muscle means faster, more efficient glucose uptake after meals. Think of it like widening the highway that carries glucose from your bloodstream into your muscles. The capacity increases, the traffic clears faster. For people over 65, this vascular benefit is compounded. Arterial stiffness increases with age, reducing blood flow to peripheral muscle and slowing glucose disposal. Cacao flavanols work directly against this process. A study from Harvard Medical School found that daily consumption of high flavanol cocoa was associated with measurable reductions in arterial stiffness in adults over 60. 1 to 1.5 ounces of 85% or higher dark chocolate per day is the research-supported dose. Eat it after lunch, not after dinner, when your insulin sensitivity is at its daily low. The synergy pairing is almonds. Research published in Metabolism found that eating almonds alongside a carbohydrate source reduced the post-meal glucose spike by up to 30%. Almonds and dark chocolate together produce a snack that is simultaneously satisfying, anti-inflammatory, and metabolically protective. This is not a cheat. This is a clinical recommendation. Now, before we get to the top 3, the ones I consider the most important foods on this entire list, if you have not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that right now. Hit the subscribe button and click the bell. We publish evidence-based content every week specifically for people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who want real clinical information, not watered-down advice. And if this video has already given you something you did not know before, a thumbs up takes 1 second, and it helps us reach the people who need this most. All right, back to the list. Number 3, berries. And I want to be precise here, because not all berries are equal and the difference matters clinically. The 3 you want are blueberries, blackberries, and mulberries in that order. Researchers at the University of Michigan found that blueberry bioactives, specifically a class of compounds called anthocyanins, the pigments responsible for their deep blue color, improved insulin sensitivity by 22% over a 6-week period in adults with elevated fasting insulin. The researchers noted that these results were comparable in magnitude to certain pharmaceutical interventions. I want you to hear that clearly. Comparable to medication achieved through fruit. The mechanism operates on 2 levels. First, anthocyanins are potent antioxidants that shield the beta cells of the pancreas from oxidative damage. Your beta cells are the cells that produce insulin. They are irreplaceable. Once they are damaged beyond a threshold, insulin production declines permanently. Protecting them is not a cosmetic concern. It is one of the most important things you can do for your long-term metabolic health. Second, anthocyanins improve the function of GLUT4 transporters, the molecular doorways built into your muscle cells that open to allow glucose inside when insulin gives the signal. In insulin-resistant individuals, this signaling cascade is impaired. The door gets the signal but does not fully open. Anthocyanins help restore that response, improving glucose clearance from the bloodstream with every meal. Mulberries deserve special mention because they contain a compound called DNJ, deoxynitrosamine, which is one of the most potent natural inhibitors of alpha-glucosidase ever identified. Alpha-glucosidase is the intestinal enzyme that breaks dietary carbohydrates down into glucose. Inhibit that enzyme, and you slow the rate at which any carbohydrate-containing meal raises your blood sugar. This is the exact mechanism of action of the prescription diabetes drug acarbose. Mulberries do it naturally. 1 cup of mixed berries daily is the clinical dose. Frozen is equally effective as fresh. The freezing process does not degrade anthocyanins. The synergy pairing is full-fat plain Greek yogurt with no added sugar. The The protein and fat blunt the glycemic response further, and the probiotic cultures in the yogurt independently support insulin sensitivity through the gut microbiome. A study from King's College London confirmed that a more diverse gut microbiome is directly associated with better post-meal blood glucose regulation. Berries and Greek yogurt is not just a good breakfast, it is a metabolic intervention. Number 2. And this is where I need your full attention, because what I am about to tell you contradicts advice that has been given to seniors for 30 years. The food is egg yolks, not egg whites. The whole egg, and specifically the yolk that most people have been told to avoid. A comprehensive review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, analyzing data from more than a dozen randomized controlled trials, found that whole egg consumption did not adversely affect cardiovascular risk in healthy individuals. That finding alone should have changed clinical practice, but it did not change fast enough. And millions of older adults are still separating their eggs and discarding the single most nutritionally dense part of the food. Here is what the yolk contains that the white does not: choline, lutein, zeaxanthin, vitamins A, D, E, and K2, and the complete profile of fat-soluble nutrients that support cellular membrane integrity. And cellular membrane integrity is directly relevant to blood sugar because insulin receptors are embedded in cell membranes. When those membranes are composed of the right fats, flexible, fluid, responsive, insulin receptors function efficiently. When membranes are stiff and degraded, insulin resistance follows. Research from the University of Connecticut found that adults who ate whole eggs for breakfast maintained significantly better blood sugar control through the entire morning compared to those who ate a carbohydrate-equivalent breakfast. The protein and fat in the whole egg slows gastric emptying, which means the carbohydrates from anything else you eat at that meal enter the bloodstream more gradually. The yolk does not just feed you, it changes the metabolic character of the entire meal. For people over 65, whole eggs also address something called anabolic resistance, the progressive decline in the muscle's ability to respond to protein signals. Muscle tissue is the primary site of glucose disposal in the body. More functional muscle mass means more capacity to clear glucose from the bloodstream after every meal. Whole eggs provide all 9 essential amino acids in a form that aging muscle can actually use. 2 to 3 whole eggs at breakfast. The synergy pairing is turmeric and black pepper. A 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric in your scrambled eggs provides curcumin, which activates AMPK, a cellular enzyme described by researchers as a metabolic master switch that improves glucose utilization. A pinch of black pepper increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%, according to research from Baylor University Medical Center. The black pepper is not optional. Without it, most of the curcumin passes through unabsorbed. I think of Vernon, 79 years old, a retired contractor from Knoxville, Tennessee. He had been eating egg white omelets for 11 years because his previous physician told him whole eggs would raise his cholesterol. His fasting glucose was 154. His energy was poor. When I explained the research on whole eggs and metabolic health, he was skeptical but willing. He switched to 3 whole eggs every morning with turmeric and black pepper. 8 weeks later, his fasting glucose was 121. His cholesterol panel was unchanged. He told me he felt 30 years younger at breakfast, and now number 1, the single most powerful, most clinically validated, most surprising food on this entire list. And I told you at the beginning, you have been throwing the most important part of it away every time you cook. The food is garlic, specifically raw garlic. And more specifically, the transformation that happens inside a crushed garlic clove during the 10 minutes most people do not wait before cooking it. Let me tell you what the research shows, because it stopped me cold the first time I encountered it. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of Nutrition, aggregating data from 9 randomized controlled trials, found that garlic supplementation reduced fasting blood glucose by an average of 11.06 milligrams per deciliter in adults with type 2 diabetes. A separate study published in Phytomedicine found reductions in fasting glucose of up to 23 milligrams per deciliter after 12 weeks of raw garlic consumption. In a population where a 10-point reduction in fasting glucose is considered clinically meaningful, these numbers are extraordinary. The active compound is allicin. And here is the critical detail that changes everything about how you should be preparing garlic. Allicin does not exist in an intact garlic clove. It is formed through a chemical reaction between 2 precursor compounds, alliin and the enzyme alliinase, that are stored in separate compartments within the clove. When you crush or finely chop garlic, those compartments rupture, the compounds combine, and allicin is produced. But the reaction takes time. Research from the Institute for Garlic Research found that allicin production peaks approximately 10 minutes after crushing and is dramatically reduced if the garlic is exposed to heat before that 10-minute window closes. This means that the way most people cook garlic, dropping it straight into a hot pan immediately after chopping, destroys the majority of its therapeutic value before it ever reaches your body. Crush your garlic. Wait 10 minutes, then cook it, or better yet, eat a portion raw. Here is what allicin does inside your body. It stimulates insulin secretion directly from pancreatic beta cells. It inhibits the liver enzyme glucose-6-phosphatase, which is responsible for releasing stored glucose into the bloodstream, the same mechanism targeted by the diabetes medication metformin, and it activates GLUT4 transporters in muscle cells, improving glucose uptake independently of insulin. 3 distinct mechanisms, all from one food, all eliminated if you skip the 10-minute wait. For people over 70, there is an additional dimension. Research published in the journal Anthocyanins found that aged garlic extract significantly reduced levels of advanced glycation end products, AGEs, in older adults. AGEs are the toxic compounds formed when glucose binds to proteins in your blood vessels and tissues. They are one of the primary mechanisms through which chronic high blood sugar causes nerve damage, kidney disease, and cardiovascular deterioration. Garlic does not just lower your blood sugar, it helps repair some of the damage that elevated blood sugar has already caused. 2 to 3 raw or lightly cooked cloves per day. Crush them. Wait 10 minutes. The synergy pairing is olive oil. Research from the journal Food Chemistry confirmed that olive oil polyphenols dramatically increase allicin bioavailability, and olive oil independently reduces the glycemic index of any meal it accompanies. Drizzle crushed raw garlic in olive oil over vegetables, spread it on grain-free bread, or mix it into salad dressings. Make this a daily habit, not an occasional addition. I think of Harriet, 81 years old, a retired school teacher from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She had been managing type 2 diabetes for 9 years. Her A1C had not moved below 7.1 in 3 years, despite medication. When I explained the 10-minute garlic preparation method, she looked at me like I had lost my mind. But she was willing. She began crushing 2 cloves of garlic every morning, waiting 10 minutes, and mixing them into olive oil with her eggs. She added a 3rd clove raw into her evening salad. 14 weeks later, her A1C was 6.4. Her nephrologist, who had been monitoring early signs of kidney stress, noted measurable improvement in her kidney function markers at her next visit. She told me she had been cooking garlic her entire life and had no idea she had been doing it in a way that eliminated its most important property. That conversation, that moment of someone realizing they had the tool all along and just needed to use it correctly, that is why I make these videos. I need you to hear what I am about to say, and I mean every word of it. The people watching this video are not people who have given up. You are here because you are looking for real information, evidence-based and honestly communicated, that gives you the ability to make better decisions about your own body. And you deserve that. Not a summary, not a simplification. The actual science, explained clearly, so you can take it into your own kitchen and into your next appointment with your physician. I have watched patients in their late 70s lower their A1C from diabetic to pre-diabetic range through food alone. I have watched people in their 80s improve kidney function markers that their specialists had told them were in permanent decline. I have watched men and women who had quietly accepted that their bodies were simply deteriorating discover that the decline was not inevitable, that biology responds to the right inputs at every age without exception. Your ability to live independently, to move without pain, to hold your grandchildren and keep up with them, to wake up in the morning with energy and clarity rather than dread, all of it is connected to what happens to your blood sugar every single day. And every food on this list is a real, documented, clinically supported tool that puts that control back in your hands. The scientific references for every study cited in this video are linked in the description below. Please read them, share them with your doctor, ask questions. Nothing in this video replaces a personalized conversation with your medical team, but this information is real and documented, and you have every right to it. If this video gave you something useful today, subscribe right now and hit the bell. We are here every week with research that is specifically designed for people who refuse to accept that getting older means surrendering your health. And leave me a comment. Tell me your age. Tell me which food on this list surprised you the most. And tell me whether you knew about the 10-minute garlic rule before today. I read every single comment, every one. I will see you in the next video.